The office lights flickered as the clock struck midnight, and Emma felt her chest tighten with panic, a scream tearing through her mind, though her lips never parted. She thought, how did it all come to this? The betrayal had arrived like a knife in her back, swift and merciless. Just hours ago, she trusted her mentor, believing in promises that now burned like lies etched on paper. Her heart pounded as if it wanted to burst free, demanding she act, demanding she fight. Emma said, "You think you can silence me, but you've already lost." The empty corridors swallowed her words, her reflection in the glass window staring back like a stranger. Years of silence, of swallowing pain, had culminated into this moment where everything could shatter, or everything could begin. She wanted to run, but her legs were rooted in defiance. The faint sound of footsteps echoed, pulling her deeper into dread. She whispered to herself, "This is my breaking point, or my rebirth." The storm outside mirrored the storm inside, thunder cracking as though the universe demanded her choice. The morning sun pierced through the blinds, but Emma's heart still carried the weight of the night. The storm had ended, yet inside her, thunder still echoed. She forced herself out of bed, each movement heavy, as if her body rejected the day. Emma thought, they expect me to bow, to remain silent, but I can't. Her reflection in the mirror stared back, haunted eyes refusing to soften. She said, "I will not be invisible anymore." The sound of her own voice startled her, trembling yet powerful. Memories of her working-class childhood swept over her, days spent unnoticed, nights longing to be seen. Emma tightened her grip on her bag and whispered, "Today, I choose to rise." Her footsteps down the apartment hall were measured, each one an act of defiance. The city bustled outside, indifferent to her struggle. Crowds moved like rivers, each face detached, each voice blending into the chaos. Emma walked among them, her mind replaying the betrayal, each step a fight against sinking despair. She thought, "I must stand taller or I'll drown in their silence." Her hands clenched at her sides, shoulders squared though her heart raced wildly. A stranger brushed against her, muttering without care, reminding her how invisible she had always felt. Emma said quietly, "Not anymore." Her words vanished into traffic noise, but her spirit clung to them as a lifeline. At the office entrance, her pulse quickened. The glass doors reflected her image again, fragile yet unbroken. She whispered, "This building will not own me." Security guards nodded absently as she walked in, unaware of the storm in her chest. The sterile smell of polished floors hit her, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like a warning. Memories of staying late, of pushing herself harder than anyone else, filled her chest with both pride and bitterness. Emma said softly, "I will not fade this time." Her heels echoed sharply, each sound a strike against her past silence. Inside the elevator, silence pressed down heavier than steel walls. Emma stared at the ascending numbers, each one carrying her closer to confrontation. She thought, this is no longer survival, it's war. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She remembered her colleagues' blunt words echoing in her mind. "You hesitate too much." The sting of truth made her chest burn, but she whispered, "No more hesitation." The elevator chimed, the doors sliding open like gates to her destiny. With a steady breath, she stepped forward. Emma sat at her desk, the hum of computers surrounding her like an ocean of static. Papers piled high, deadlines breathing down her neck, but it wasn't the work that crushed her, it was the silence. She thought, "They never see me, only the mistakes I might make." Her colleagues moved past, voices sharp and dismissive, yet no one looked her way. Emma whispered, "Am I invisible to them all?" Her hand traced the edge of her notepad, pressing harder until the paper bent. Years of swallowing her voice pressed down, a weight growing unbearable. She remembered childhood dinners where her words went unheard, drowned by louder voices. The same feeling now lived here, in this office, where silence had become her prison. Her chest burned with the question, how much longer can I remain unseen? Emails stacked endlessly on her screen, their sharp tones disguised as professionalism. Emma thought, Every word feels like a judgment, a reminder that I am always one mistake away from collapse. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, hesitation stealing precious seconds. A colleague leaned nearby, laughing with another, their voices carrying arrogance. Emma's pulse quickened, but she forced her gaze back to her work. She said under her breath, "Focus, Emma, focus." Yet the weight of unspoken criticism pressed harder than any words. Her jaw tightened, nails biting into her palm. For years, hesitation had been her shadow, always reminding her that she was one step too slow. But as her reflection shimmered faintly on the screen, she whispered, "Not this time. I will not let fear decide for me." The colleague she least expected approached, Daniel, the loner, the one who rarely spoke. His voice was calm yet cutting. "You hesitate too much, Emma." She flinched, her pen snapping in her hand. His bluntness was like ice water, shocking but undeniable. She thought, even he sees it, the truth I've buried. Daniel's eyes held no malice, only a strange clarity that unnerved her. Emma said softly, "You think I don't know that?" Her words trembled, anger laced with shame. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Then stop waiting for permission. No one's going to hand it to you." The words struck her harder than the betrayal she carried, because they carried the weight of truth she could no longer ignore. Emma sat frozen, Daniel's words echoing like thunder in her chest. She thought, "I have been waiting, always waiting for someone to see me." Her reflection in the glossy desk surface looked small, fragile, almost defeated. But Daniel's stare pressed like a challenge. Emma whispered, "I don't know if I can." He didn't soften. He said, "You don't have to know, you just have to move." The simplicity of his truth shook her more than complex speeches ever could. She wanted to scream back, to resist, but something inside her stirred, an ember refusing to die. Her pulse hammered as if urging her forward, though fear chained her to her seat. The office buzzed around her, but Emma no longer heard it. She thought, "Silence has chained me for too long. Maybe Daniel's right. Maybe I have to stop waiting." Her heart thundered in defiance against her fear. She placed her broken pen aside and pulled a fresh sheet of paper, the crisp sound louder than the chatter nearby. Her hand trembled but steadied as she wrote, "This ends today," she said quietly. "If they won't give me a voice, I'll take it myself." Her pulse slowed, resolve hardening in her chest like stone. For the first time, hesitation loosened its grip, replaced by a fragile but growing strength. The meeting room buzzed with low chatter as Emma entered, her pulse quickening. Eyes darted toward her, some curious, others dismissive. She thought, "They already expect me to fail." The manager's voice cut through the air, sharp and authoritative, demanding updates. Emma shifted in her seat, the weight of silence pressing against her ribs. She forced her hand to rise, her voice shaky but determined. "I have something to add." A ripple of surprise spread across the table. The manager raised a brow, skeptical. Emma's palms burned with sweat, but her words found shape. She said, "We've overlooked a critical flaw in the proposal." The room stilled, tension coiling like a storm. Her heart pounded, daring her to continue. Her words tumbled out, sharp and precise, cutting through the noise of dismissive glances. Emma thought, "If I stop now, I'll never be heard again." The manager leaned forward, eyes narrowing, his lips twisting with irritation. He said, "Are you questioning my plan?" The room froze, colleagues exchanging uneasy glances. Emma's chest tightened, fear clawing at her throat. But she steadied her voice, saying, "I'm questioning a mistake that could cost us all." The silence stretched, heavier than the air itself. A junior employee coughed nervously, shuffling papers. Emma gripped the table, anchoring herself against the tide of doubt. The manager's tone turned sharp, his words slicing like a blade. He said, "Maybe you should focus on your own work instead of undermining others." Emma's stomach dropped, humiliation threatening to choke her. She thought, "He wants to break me in front of them all." Laughter flickered at the edges of the room, quickly stifled. Her throat burned, but she forced herself not to shrink. Emma whispered to herself, No more silence. Her gaze lifted, steady now, meeting his eyes without flinching. She said firmly, pointing out flaws is part of my work, and I won't apologize for it. The air crackled with unspoken tension, the battle line drawn. Daniel sat quietly at the end of the table, arms folded, his eyes locked on Emma. He didn't speak, but his gaze carried a weight that steadied her. She thought, he's reminding me, don't hesitate. The manager shifted, clearly irritated that she hadn't collapsed. Emma exhaled slowly, her voice stronger now. She said, if we proceed as written, the client will see through the gap. We risk losing everything. The words hit like stone against glass, cracking the silence. Daniel gave the faintest nod, subtle but powerful. Emma's pulse steadied, a fire sparking where fear once ruled. The meeting ended in uneasy silence, but Emma's chest carried both fear and pride. She thought, they didn't dismiss me this time. They heard me. As the room emptied, whispers followed, some critical, some curious. Emma packed her notes with trembling hands, still reeling from the confrontation. Daniel passed by, his words sharp yet grounding. That was the first time you actually showed up. She flinched, unsure if it was insult or praise. But as his footsteps faded, she realized it didn't matter. For the first time, she had refused to be erased. She whispered to herself, this is just the beginning. The office felt colder than ever, even though the heating hummed quietly. Emma sat at her desk, replaying the meeting like a cruel reel in her head. She thought, I spoke, but was it enough? Or did I just dig myself deeper? The whispers hadn't stopped, cutting into her like unseen knives. She felt the isolation stretch wide around her, colleagues avoiding her eyes, some smirking in shadows. Emma's hands trembled as she scrolled through emails, each one sharper than the last, laced with judgment she could almost hear aloud. She whispered, maybe I was wrong to fight back. Doubt coiled tight in her chest, dragging her into the silence she thought she'd left behind. The walls pressed inward, suffocating. The hum of computers a cruel reminder that nothing had truly changed. Emma stepped into the restroom, gripping the sink until her knuckles whitened. She thought, why can't I shake their voices? Why do their doubts still weigh heavier than my truth? Her reflection looked fragile, almost unfamiliar, eyes rimmed red from exhaustion. She whispered, I can't keep fighting everyone. The words cracked like glass, echoing softly against the tiled walls. Yet in the silence, a harsher voice inside pushed back. If you give up now, you'll vanish forever. Her chest heaved, torn between retreat and resistance. She splashed cold water on her face, the shock grounding her for a fleeting second. Still, the question gnawed. Am I strong enough to survive this storm? The day dragged into evening, the office nearly empty, but Emma remained, buried in paperwork. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the ticking clock. She thought, everyone else has a place here but me. I'm still the outsider. Her chest tightened, loneliness weighing like stone. She whispered, I can't keep doing this alone. The sound of footsteps startled her, and she glanced up to see Daniel approaching. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes unreadable. He said flatly, you're not broken, you were just scared. The bluntness cut through her fog, but she couldn't answer. He turned away, leaving only the echo of his words behind. She thought, maybe he's wrong. Or maybe he's the only one who sees me. The city outside glowed with lights, but Emma felt trapped in shadow. She thought, I'm drowning in their expectations, in my own silence. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling as tears threatened. Her body ached from tension, every muscle taut with unspoken words. Daniel's blunt voice still echoed in her head, you're just scared. The truth of it pierced, leaving her raw and exposed. Emma whispered, maybe I am scared, but fear has been my only companion. The empty office swallowed her words, but the sting of honesty lingered. She pressed her palms to her face, trembling, as the walls seemed to close in again. Emma walked home under the weight of night, the city buzzing indifferently around her. She thought, I gave everything, and still it isn't enough. Her footsteps echoed on the wet pavement, blending with distant traffic. Neon signs flickered overhead, casting harsh colors across her tired face. She whispered, "Maybe I should stop fighting." The words chilled her, heavy with surrender. Yet deep inside, a spark refused to die, faint but insistent. Daniel's challenge returned to her mind. Stop waiting for permission. She clenched her fists, pulse quickening as if daring her to choose. Her chest rose with a trembling breath, caught between despair and defiance. The next morning, Emma arrived early, her chest heavy but her mind alert. She opened a file on her desk, eyes widening at what she read. Hidden numbers, subtle manipulations, proof of lies buried in reports. She thought, this wasn't an accident, it was planned. Her heart pounded as betrayal sharpened into clarity. She whispered, "They wanted me to fail, to take the blame." The realization burned, shaking her to her core. Yet the discovery carried power. If she exposed this, she could turn the tables. She pressed her hand flat against the papers, breathing hard. She said, "This changes everything." The office remained silent, unaware that a storm had just been unleashed. Her hands shook as she photocopied the evidence, each click of the machine loud in the empty room. She thought, if they know I've found this, they'll come for me. But fear was no longer enough to stop her. She whispered, "I won't let them bury me." She slid the copies into her bag, her fingers trembling but steadying with each motion. Every sound in the office now felt amplified, each creak of the floor like a warning. Yet her chest surged with adrenaline, fire replacing fear. She thought, I finally hold something that can't be ignored. Emma stood in the hallway, clutching her bag as footsteps echoed nearby. She thought, do they already suspect me? Her pulse thundered, but retreat was no longer an option. Daniel appeared suddenly, his expression sharp. He said quietly, "You found something, didn't you?" She froze, caught between trust and caution. His gaze didn't waver, and though sarcasm edged his tone, his eyes carried something else, urgency. Emma whispered, "If I tell you, there's no going back." He stepped closer, voice low. "Then don't whisper, say it loud." Her chest tightened as the weight of the choice bore down on her. Emma spread the documents across the desk, her hands trembling as Daniel leaned over to scan them. His eyes narrowed, his lips pressing into a grim line. He said, "This isn't incompetence, it's sabotage." Her chest clenched, hearing aloud what she had feared. She thought, they set me up from the beginning. Daniel looked at her sharply. He said, "You expose this, you'll bring the whole system down." The weight of choice pressed heavy, but Emma whispered, "Then let it fall." The words shocked even her, but they carried a strength she had never felt before. The office door creaked open, and Emma froze. A superior entered, his eyes narrowing at the sight of her and Daniel standing over the documents. Emma thought, it's too late to hide. Her pulse raced, but her hand stayed firm on the papers. The superior's voice was calm, but laced with venom. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma lifted her chin, refusing to shrink. She said firmly, uncovering the truth. Daniel stood silent beside her, but his presence anchored her like steel. For the first time, Emma felt the weight of power shift. No longer the hunted, but the one holding the torch. The conference room brimmed with tension, executives seated in a tight circle, while Emma stood at the far end, her papers spread before her. She thought, this is the moment everything breaks. Her chest pulsed with fear, yet her hands no longer trembled. She said firmly, "The numbers have been falsified. The reports are designed to fail, and I was meant to carry the blame." Gasps echoed, whispers rippled across the table. The superior shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. Emma locked eyes with him, her voice unyielding. "Not anymore." The silence stretched like a drawn bowstring, each second heavy with the weight of her defiance. The superior rose, voice booming across the table. "These accusations are baseless." His words struck like hammers, but Emma stood taller. She thought, if I falter now, I lose everything. Daniel, seated quietly in the corner, leaned forward, his voice sharp. "She's right. I've reviewed the documents myself." The room gasped again, the tide shifting. Emma's chest burned, but she pressed forward, saying, "This company has thrived on silence, but silence ends today." Her words rang with conviction, reverberating through the stunned air. The superior slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Emma flinched but didn't break. She said, "I know exactly what I'm doing, telling the truth." Her voice cut through the room like lightning. She thought, "This is who I was meant to be." The room sat frozen, the weight of her words undeniable. Daniel's eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of pride breaking his usual guarded stare. Emma's pulse steadied, her fear transforming into a power she had never known. The executives exchanged glances, murmurs rising. Emma's words had cracked the silence, and now it spread like wildfire. She thought, "They see it. They can't ignore me anymore." One executive cleared her throat, saying carefully, "We need to investigate this." The superior's face darkened, but the balance had shifted. Emma exhaled slowly, her body shaking with release, yet her stance unbroken. She whispered, "For once, they're listening." It was not victory yet, but it was the beginning of change. The meeting ended with unresolved tension, but Emma walked out with her head high. She thought, "I didn't collapse. I stood my ground." The hallway stretched before her, no longer suffocating but wide with possibility. Daniel caught up, his tone blunt but softer than usual. "That was the loudest you've ever been." She almost smiled, whispering, "And I'm not done yet." For the first time, her steps felt light, each one carrying her closer to the person she had always hidden inside. The following week arrived quietly, but for Emma it carried the weight of transformation. Each morning she entered the office with shoulders straight, no longer shrinking beneath the hum of whispers. She thought, "They don't have to like me. They just have to hear me." Her desk no longer felt like a cage but a platform. The emails she drafted were crisp, decisive, carrying a confidence that startled even herself. Colleagues glanced over, some with suspicion, others with quiet recognition. Emma whispered, "I'm not invisible anymore." The hum of the office felt different, less like static, more like background music to her own rhythm. The same chair that once bound her now anchored her as a force unshaken. The break room had once been hostile territory, filled with laughter that excluded her. But now, when Emma entered, the air shifted. She thought, respect doesn't come from silence. It comes from standing when it's hardest. She poured coffee steadily, the machine hissing beside her. A colleague who once mocked her nodded politely, offering a faint smile. Another greeted her softly, "Morning, Emma." She met their gaze without flinching, her reply clear, "Good morning." The room settled into quiet acknowledgement. She thought, "They may never be allies, but they will never erase me again." The break room, once suffocating, now felt neutral, no longer a battlefield, but a stage where she chose her presence. Later that day, Daniel leaned casually against her desk, arms folded, his gaze sharper than ever. He said, "You're finally starting to look like you belong." Emma smirked faintly, her voice steady. "I've always belonged. I just stopped pretending I didn't." His brow rose, surprise flickering in his eyes, though he didn't admit it. She thought, even he sees it now. The man who only dealt in blunt truths recognizes mine. For the first time, his silence wasn't dismissive but respectful, a quiet acknowledgement that spoke louder than his words. Emma said softly, "Thank you for not letting me hide." He shrugged, his voice dry. "Don't thank me, just don't go back." And for once, she knew she wouldn't. That evening, Emma walked the city streets once more, but the weight was gone. Where neon signs once mocked her, they now painted her steps with fire and brilliance. She thought, "This city doesn't erase me, it mirrors me. Relentless, alive." Oh, the hum of traffic and chatter blended into a rhythm that matched her steady pulse. She paused to look at her reflection in a glass storefront. For the first time, the woman staring back wasn't a shadow. She whispered, "I know who I am." People rushed past, but Emma no longer felt lost in their motion. Every step she took was deliberate, a march toward her own future. She thought, I am no longer waiting for the world to see me. I see myself. Emma stood by the window of her apartment, the city skyline sprawling before her in a blaze of light. She thought, I am no longer the girl who swallowed her words, who shrank into silence. Her reflection merged with the city's glow, a symbol of strength reborn. She whispered, I am my own voice now. The words didn't need an audience. They carried power simply because they were hers. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the storm inside finally quiet. The night pressed close, but it was no longer suffocating. It was vast, endless, waiting. Emma thought, the battle was never about them. It was always about me. And for the first time, she felt the future wasn't something she feared. It was something she owned.